Welcome back to my podcast, the reboot for Real Estate and Wealth podcast. And today, our first topic is going to be the challenges that you can expect to face when you are buying a house. And this topic is really important to me. I know it has been a long time since I posted a podcast episode. And so I knew that I really needed to get back to this. And I enjoyed doing it, but I just didn't have the time. 2004 has been a really, really, really busy year for me. And, I don't care what anyone says. People are still buying and selling real estate. It doesn't matter what the interest rates are. It doesn't matter what the economic conditions are. People are still buying real estate because some people have to buy real estate. Some people get divorced and they need to sell their home. People pass away and a home needs to be sold. So people are still selling. There are still people that are buying. This topic is important to me because I've worked with so many buyers and sellers, but this is really about buyers and some of the challenges that you're going to face when you are buying a house. And I want you to be prepared so that you don't feel defeated when those challenges arise. Okay. Because is the goal is for you to get the keys to your home. And why that's so important in the African American community, we are trailing behind every other group in homeownership and also in net worth. Net worth is tied to real estate. And so you gotta buy homes. And I understand buying a home might not be for everyone in every situation. Some people rent for reasons, and I understand. Okay. So let's jump into some of the challenges that you can expect to face. And I'm going to talk about 5 different challenges today so that, again, once you see these challenges arise, you're going to know how to handle them and you're going to expect them. That's the most important part, right? In life, we are going to have challenges, but as long as we know what to expect, and that you can see on the other side and that you're not the only one, it does help. Okay, so the first challenge that we're going to talk about is negotiating your offer in a competitive market. Now, in the DMV area where I am and where I primarily sell real estate is in Maryland. And it's still competitive. Now, not every house is going to have multiple offers, but just depending on the particular house, the price, the location, because as we know, location is everything, you might still have multiple offers in that area. And I'll let you know, I have a listing that I have a few listings, but one of my listings, we had gotten 8+ offers. And the reason why I say 8+ is because I had 8 written, but I had some verbals that came in. I had people when it was temporarily off the market because I just had so much interest on this particular house. It took me a few days to sort through the different offers and talking to the different agents and adjusting some of the offers until we got down to the final offer. And we're going to be closing on that house by the end of the week. So it's important that you understand it might not seem like it's still a competitive market, but in the area that you're in, it might be the house that you decide to submit an offer on. There might be other offers. So this is a challenge that you're going to have to face. Now, how do you overcome that challenge? First and foremost, as a real estate agent, we usually reach out to the listing agent and find out, are there any other offers? That is the first step. And the reason why that's the first step is because you have to know, are you competing with anyone else? Now, you can submit your offer. The agent can tell you that there are no other offers. You can submit your offer, and then lo and behold, they get 2, 3 other offers, right? So now your agent does need to keep in contact with that other agent to see if any other offers did come in, because not every agent is going to ask for highest and best offer. Highest and best offer just means that, hey, I have multiple offers and I want everyone to have an equal chance to submit their best offer. Now, you should be submitting your best offer to start off with, but depending on how badly you want a particular house, you might adjust your offer. Okay. And also, when you're submitting your offer, the least contingencies that you have in your offer will help. Now, I'm not saying to get rid of contingencies that are important to you, but if you're asking for closing cost help and you really don't need it, then that might be something that you should not ask for, depending upon how much you like that particular house. Okay. So that is the first one. Negotiating your offer in a competitive market. So let's go to the second one, which is negotiating after your inspection. Now, this is once you are already under contract. Okay, you're not competing against anyone yet. The seller has signed off. You have come to a meeting of the minds between the buyer and seller. You are under contract. Now, your contract will have a certain amount of days for you to get your home inspection done. And within that time frame, you can request repairs. Now, each state is different, but I'm speaking on Maryland. You can request repairs. The seller does not have to agree to make any of the repairs that you ask for, but in many situations, the seller might be open to making some repairs, even if they say the house is being sold as is. And if you feel like there are deal breakers that will make you walk away from the transaction, I encourage you, ask for those repairs. You'll be surprised that some sellers will be willing to make it or possibly give you a credit towards you doing those repairs later on. Okay. So now you've done your home inspection. You are asking for repairs. This is when the negotiating comes in. If you ask for ABC repairs, the seller can agree to make those repairs. The seller can decline to make those repairs, or the seller can counter those repairs and go back to you, the buyer's agent, and the buyer and say, hey, you asked for ABC repairs, but I'm willing to do A and C. Now you can accept that, or maybe you can go back because maybe these were your deal breakers. And if they're not willing to make A, B, and C, then you're going to walk. This is when you can ask for an additional credit because maybe the seller doesn't want to, make those repairs on their own, coordinate the repairs and do all of that. But you have to also think you're under contract. The seller has some other things that they want to do, right? They want to move on to the next stage, which could be relocating to another area. They got another job in another town. They have their house under contract that they're buying now, and they want to move on to their next stage in life. So they might be willing to negotiate with you and give you a extra credit or make that actual repair that they said that they wouldn't make. I have a client that is under contract, another client that's under contract, and it was tough going back and forth with the repairs. My client did get closing cost help, and the seller felt like, well, we gave you closing cost help. Like, we didn't think you were going to ask for repairs. And the house was in pretty decent shape. Okay. It wasn't a mess. Even if the seller made no repairs, it wasn't really that bad. But the buyer did want some repairs to be made. In the end, the seller came back to us and said, no, they would make one small repair just because they already had the equipment, and that was it. So we went back and we asked for a credit, and then we ended up negotiating on how much that credit would be, and the buyer ended up accepting that credit. And then we were able to move on to the next stage. So negotiating repairs sometimes can be a tricky situation, but it can be done. So I would encourage you to still ask for repairs if you feel they are deal breakers and that will make you walk away from the deal. Okay, let's talk about the third challenge that you may face while you're going through the home buying process. And again, we want to make sure that you are aware of some of these challenges. And if you're a first-time home buyer, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer to not understand this process. You might have bought a house 20 years ago and things have changed, right? So you're kind of, in a sense, a first-time home buyer because you're not familiar with this process. But if you're a first-time home buyer, I do have an ebook that I detail these steps in. And if you're interested in reading about it, click the link that will be in the description to get a copy of your ebook, so that you can understand this process and be well prepared when you're ready to buy a house. But let's get into number 3. So understanding the appraisal issues that might arise. So you've gotten through and you got the contract. You've gotten through the home inspection. Now, okay, what's next? The appraisal. So an appraisal is a professional opinion by a certified appraiser on how much your house is going to be worth. An appraisal is required if you are using financing to purchase your home. If you're using financing, you have to have an appraisal done. If you're buying with cash, you don't have to have an appraisal done, and you can waive that contingency, which a lot of people that buy with cash do waive that contingency. So when you're financing, the lender is basically saying like, hey, you have a purchase price of $500,000 on this house. We're only willing to lend you $500,000 for this house if it appraises for that. If it does not appraise for the purchase price amount, then we're not willing to give you that money. Rightfully so, because you wouldn't do it either. So the lender is only going to lend you money on the lower of either the purchase price or the appraised value. So if the appraisal comes in lower, so for this example, if you have a house that's under contract for 500,000 and the appraisal comes in at 475, well, that's a $25,000 gap, which is a huge difference and can make a difference and can break the whole deal. Now, for the seller, they want their 500. For the buyer, they're not willing to pay more for the house than what it's worth. So we have a gap there. And what can we do? So there's many options that can happen. First, if the buyer has the money and they really want to buy this house, they can put up the difference in the gap, that $25,000. Just understand, if you do that, you still have to pay your closing costs. So that's going to be on top of. But if you have the money and you really want the house, this is something that you absolutely can make the decision to do. Another option is going to the seller and saying, hey, Mr. Seller, your house didn't appraise for the 500,000 that you were selling it for, and we need you to reduce the purchase price down to the appraised value of 475. Most cases, the seller will do it. But if it's tight, they needed all of that money to go towards, their next purchase or their project, whatever they're doing, they might push back on it. They might really feel that their house is worth 500,000. Rightfully so. You can feel that way. But the fact remains that the lender is not going to lend on that. And if the seller holds firm on that they're not reducing the purchase price down to the appraised value, you as the buyer have the opportunity to walk. You do not have to stay in that contract. Now, the other option is to split the difference. Now, if the buyer has the money to come to the table and bring half, and the seller reduces the purchase price down by half, that can work. Now, 25,000 is a big difference. Hopefully, when you submitted the offer, your real estate agent did a market analysis to determine how much houses have sold for in that area. And if they did that, then they have an idea of different comps in the area, and you can challenge that appraisal. So the buyer can challenge it as well as the seller can challenge the appraisal. You will have to give a copy of the appraisal to the seller if the property does not appraise for the full value and you're looking for them to reduce it. The seller can and the listing agent can look at that appraisal, see what comps were used. I recently had a situation where the appraiser used comps for houses. So this particular house was built, I believe it was like 2017, around in that time. They used houses that were built in the 19, it started with the 19. Like, we're not even in the same era, okay? And we challenged it. From what I'm remembering, I believe they did bring up the price some, but I had to give comps and, they had to give an explanation, and then it all worked out, right? But that is can be a huge hurdle to overcome if the property does not appraise. Now, you might be asking, Tabitha, what if the property appraises for more than the purchase price? So my purchase price is 500,000. What if it appraises for 525? Do I have to increase the purchase price amount to the 525? And the answer is no. The seller won't even know what it appraised for. As long as the property appraises for the purchase price amount minimum, they don't need to know. The only time the seller is going to know what the house appraised for exactly is if it appraises for less. Okay. So that is the third one, overcoming appraisal issues. Let's move on to the fourth challenge that you might face while purchasing a home. The fourth one is clearing any conditions the lender might have. So we've gone through all of these steps. Now, while you're going through the first three hurdles that you might have to overcome, you have been processing your loan. So this is where some people feel overwhelmed because you have all of these things that you need to do in order to get to the keys to your house. And while you're doing these things, you also still have to be processing your loan. And to process your loan, you do need to provide documentation to your lender. So the purpose of the lender is your loan officer is to put together a package of all of your stuff and hand it over to the underwriter for them to review. And the underwriter is going to be the one that is approving your loan. So when the lender is putting together your packet, they need things like your bank statement, tax returns, and some lenders are not even asking for tax returns anymore, pay stubs, and any other items that they deem necessary to put together this packet. And any other items could be some explanation letters if they see something on your credit or they saw something in your bank statement that needed an explanation. Well, they might ask you to write a letter explaining it so that they are putting the best package together to go to underwriting. Now, when underwriting looks through this package, I mean, they are looking with a fine tooth comb. Okay. They are looking at every line, they are crossing every T and dotting every I. And when underwriting gets through the file, they're going to make a determination. It's either it's approved with conditions, or the loan is denied. You don't want your loan to be denied, but approved with conditions is fine. The underwriter is basically saying that we'll approve your loan, but you have to provide additional documentation. Now, some of the conditions might be something that the seller has to do. It could be something that they need the realtors to do, such as there's an addendum that's missing an initial or a signature, or there's a whole addendum that's completely missing, or there's just something that they need assistance with getting. But most oftentimes, it's really the conditions are for the buyer. So when you started the process of getting pre-approved, you had to provide some documentation like your bank statements and pay stubs and stuff like that. Well, by the time your file gets to underwriting, so when you are pre-approved, you start looking for houses and then you actually get a house under contract. Well, it could be 30, 60 days, right? So by the time the underwriter gets your file, some of your documents might be outdated. They need 2 months worth of bank statements. They need 30 days worth of pay stubs. Well, by the time they get your documents, they might be outdated and they might ask for an updated pay stub or updated bank statement that you need to provide. And there might be other conditions. Maybe they saw something on your bank statement. Maybe you had a large deposit or you had a fee, and they might ask, well, what is this? And you need to write an explanation. They might see that you made a transfer into another bank account and they want to see that bank account, or where your funds are coming from, you didn't provide that bank statement, and they need to see where the funds are coming from. Ultimately, they're asking for 2 billing cycles, so 2 months of your bank statement. If you make a large deposit in during those 2 statements, they'll need to know where that money came from. But if the money has been in the account prior to those 2 bank statements, they won't need to source the funds where they're coming from for your closing costs that you're going to use to pay your closing costs. Once you are, your loan officer is going to work with you to get all of those conditions. And once they have all of those conditions, then they'll resubmit back into underwriting. Hopefully, you have everything that the underwriter asked for, and then they can do a final approval of your loan. But maybe not. Maybe something that you submitted opened up another can of worms, and now they have some additional questions, or they need additional documentation from you. So that might be a back and forth thing with the underwriter, and asking for conditions and making sure that the documents that you're providing them works. Okay. So once you get past that challenge, we have one more challenge that you might encounter during this home buying process. And don't worry, we're almost done. You are almost there at the finish line where you're going to get the keys to your new home. So just one more, just hold on. We have one more to think about. So the fifth challenge that you might encounter when buying a house is that final walkthrough. Now, I hope your real estate agent lets you know that you should do a final walkthrough. The final walkthrough, and I like to do 2 final walkthroughs. 2 final walkthroughs are kind of a requirement if you requested repairs, and especially if there are a lot of repairs. If they're minor repairs, you don't necessarily need 2 walkthroughs. So one of my requirements is that all repairs the seller makes needs to be done at least 5 days before closing. So if you're closing on the 30th, we need those repairs to be done by the 25th, and provide the receipts from licensed contractor that the work has been done. That gives us time to look at those receipts and also schedule a time to go out and make sure that those repairs were done in a workmanship like manner. You don't know how many times we have gone out for that walkthrough and the repairs that they said were done were not done, or they did something else. It wasn't what we were expecting to be done, or they just weren't done right. And you just need a little bit of time to be able to go take a look at those repairs, and then go back to the seller and say, hey, these items were not done. And what I recommend is, while you're there, to take a picture of whatever was not done or was not done properly, so that you can send them so that they know what needs to be done. Now, you can go and do your final walkthrough yourself. However, if you're not handy and you're just not sure, the company that you use to do your home inspection usually will charge a much lesser fee to go and do a reinspection of those repairs for you. They'll give you a report, and then you can use that to go back to the seller. But that's not a requirement. You don't have to do that. It's just an option for you if you feel like, I don't feel comfortable making sure that these repairs are okay. So 5 days before closing, make sure that those repairs are done. Go do your final walkthrough of the repairs. Best case scenario is everything was done really, really well. Now, the final walkthrough that you're going to do, that's going to happen like the day before or the day of. That walkthrough, you want to like walk through the house, turn on the water, flush the toilets, like go in the basement, just making sure that everything is working like you expect it to be working. I'll tell you a story. This was years ago, um, at least 10 years ago, when we did our final walkthrough and everything seemed okay. We walked around outside and it was like, wait a minute, wasn't there a condenser unit here when we submitted the contract? And I was like, yeah, there was one. We even made sure we went through the pictures and there was a condenser unit. And if you're not sure with what a condenser unit is, it is that unit that sits outside that controls the AC in the house. Someone stole the condenser unit. Like, they stole the condenser unit. So we had to go back and say the condenser unit is missing. The seller needs to replace that before we go to closing. Miraculously, the seller was willing to replace it, and they replaced it really quickly. We only had to push back closing um, a couple of days for them to install the condenser unit. But it's important that you go through and you make sure, especially if it was raining like the day before or the day of closing, it's raining. Walk through, make sure there's no leaks, there's no water puddling in the basement, like there are no issues with this house. Because even if you buy a house in as is condition, you did not ask for any repairs or anything like that, you are still entitled to get the house in the same condition as the time you submitted your offer and your offer was accepted. So in my case, the scenario that I gave you, a condenser unit was there. So a condenser unit needs to be there at the time we go to closing. Okay, so that is the fifth and final challenge. And once you get through those, guess what? You're going to get your keys and you're going to be a homeowner. And just like having a child, you forget about all the pain that you went through because you're just happy that you have the keys to your house. So if this was helpful for you, or if you have any questions, feel free to put those questions in the comment section. Or if you like this content, let me know. Let me know so I know what kind of information you're interested in, and what to bring to you. But again, if you're a first-time home buyer and you just want some more information on getting started, get my book, How to Buy a House in 12 Months. I'm going to put the link in the description so that you can click on that. And with purchasing the book, you also will get some additional resources, because one of the biggest challenges for people to even get to the point of getting pre-approved is credit and money, not having enough money to buy. So I do talk about how to improve your credit, how to save money, and provide some additional resources for you to help you with saving, budgeting, and things like that. So thank you for tuning in to my reboot with the Real Estate and Wealth podcast. My goal is to help you become homeowners and how to leverage real estate to grow your net worth. So I will see you on the next episode.